The US and Ukraine have given an upbeat assessment of talks in Geneva on ending the war with Russia. The White House said the consultations reaffirmed that any future agreement must fully uphold Ukraine's sovereignty and deliver a sustainable and just peace. Correspondents say it is significant that they are acknowledging that what the draft peace plan is today is different to what it was 48 hours ago, when it seemed so negative towards Ukraine and its future and positive towards Russia. They say clearly something has changed. The mood music seems more positive and optimistic, and there is a new document that is now being considered, which details of which are still unknown.
But I can tell you, that I feel very optimistic that we can get something done here, because we made a tremendous amount of progress today. Oh, it was very positive. I'm telling you, today was the most productive day we have had.
Right now, we are at a critical moment, and we are working closely with the United States, with European partners, with many others to define steps that can end Russia's war against us, against Ukraine, and bring real security. And there is a lot of noise in the media, a lot of political pressure, and even greater responsibility for the decisions ahead. Putin wants legal recognition for what he has stolen, to break the principle of territorial integrity and sovereignty. And that's the main problem. You all understand what that means. He wants it not only from Ukraine, he wants it from the whole world, and it's very dangerous. Of course, we all continue working with partners, especially the United States, and look for compromises that strengthen but not weaken us. And we will continue explaining how dangerous it is to pretend that aggression is something one can simply overlook and move on. And I ask you, do not stay silent. Do not be passive observers of history. Be participants. It is important to support Ukraine now, and I thank you for that support. It is important to support the negotiation process, and I am grateful for every piece of advice and every bit of information we receive from European leaders. And it is crucial to support the principles on which Europe stands, that borders cannot be changed by force, that war criminals must not escape justice, and that the aggressor must pay fully for the war he started.
President Zelensky, and before him, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Meanwhile, Ukrainian officials say Russia has carried out a massive drone attack on the eastern city of Kharkiv. The barrage killed 4 people and injured more than a dozen others. The mayor said 15 strikes were recorded in 6 areas of the city. Kharkiv is close to the border and is frequently targeted. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from London by the author and international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. Good to see you, Dr. Laskiewicz. So both Ukraine and the US sounding optimistic following their talks. Are they perhaps being too optimistic, or is it the Americans who are being too hopeful?
Yeah, it's very hard to judge precisely what is happening. In your clip, which you showed just now, there's a direct contradiction. President Zelensky is saying there that he's basically sticking to his guns, no territorial concessions, reparations from Russia, and also is calling, please note, Putin a war criminal, and by extension Russia. On the other hand, America is saying it sounds hopeful. Now, there's something odd here. The only reasonable explanation which is possible, analytically speaking, is that Ukraine has made a concession somewhere, and so has America. And this is about the only thing that is possible, which would explain the upbeat mood of the Americans, coupled with the defiant tone of President Zelensky.
Indeed, but of course you know as well as we do that sometimes what they say publicly is quite different from what they're doing privately. And just looking at the many stumbling blocks in this 28-point plan, assuming that's the same one, we have in it the suggestion that Ukraine should give up territory, that it should abandon all hopes of joining NATO, and that it should reduce the size of its armed forces. And on the other side, there's a demand that Russia hand over some of the billions of its frozen assets to fund Ukraine's reconstruction, to rebuild the cities that Russia attacked. I mean, that's attacked. That sounds like a lot of stumbling blocks and red lines, doesn't it?
Well, let's examine that a little bit more closely. One aspect here is that it must be realized that for Russia, a few billions here or there, if it secures its primary objectives, are really no problem at all. The Russians are not primarily an economics country, but a political one. And for them, economics is a tool. If the price were, I don't know, 10 billions or whatever, they would pay that without hesitation, providing they could secure the territorial extension of Russia as a de jure, in other words, legally recognized by everyone. That is worth a few billions. And therefore, the last point you mentioned isn't actually the stumbling block. The stumbling block is Ukraine, and for that matter, its partners, prepared to accept this territorial loss and the essential neutralization of Ukraine. Please note, if it has only half its army and also cannot join NATO, then technically it is still wide open to a Russian attack. And the notion of Russia giving guarantees, well, it doesn't really work very well. Polish history, as the Poles like to say, shows this because there were 19 treaties signed between Poland and Russia broke every single one, including 3 eternal treaties. So therefore, the guarantees, unless they are backed by the states, the USA, are meaningless. And 1994 shows that even that, this United States support, is not necessarily sufficient.
Now, before the US-Ukraine talks, President Putin had backed Washington's original proposal, saying that they can form the basis of a final peace settlement. That proposal was more or less the wish of Russia, wasn't it? So how do you think Russia is likely to respond to this new proposal? And what do you think this new agreement could mean for Moscow's interest, bearing in mind that it's still not clear what the final text might actually look like?
Well, Russia's made it clear that it's a basis, the 28-point plan was a basis of discussion, and there may well be further points or points less. Essentially, the key ones are the territory, for example, and the neutralization of Ukraine. Providing those go through, I suppose he'd be willing to listen to some sort of concessions. On his side, I've mentioned one possibility. The second problem is that this, however it's framed at present, this is a huge victory for Russia. And the question is, will they go on, as I suggested previously they might do, to carry on and seeing if they can acquire more land elsewhere? Please note, as it stands, the plan proposed by USA is a victory for Russia.
So at the very least, I mean, it would be fair to say that now they have a document or documents that would form the basis for negotiations, whereas previously there were no such grounds. And would it also be fair to say that negotiations involve compromise, which would potentially involve Russia giving up some of its claims, but it doesn't seem to want to do that regardless of what proposal is placed before it?
Precisely, both points are correct. First and foremost, at least there is a peace plan of sorts. And secondly, Russia is certainly not going to make any major concessions, not when it's on a roll like it is at present. And therefore, from that point of view, it is something, it is a step, but whether it is achievable, the key point is quite simple. President Donald Trump said Thursday, come this Thursday, if Ukraine doesn't agree, he's going to withdraw all American support. It is without American technology, Ukraine cannot really fight on. And that is the key point. All the Europeans and so on are simply ballast on board. They're not very important in this. So it hinges on that point. As far as I can tell, President Donald Trump is not going to be pressurizing Russia to give up much. So Russia in effect, when it says it's a basis for negotiation, is prepared to make some minor concessions, pay some money, for example, but nothing more than that. And whether Ukraine is prepared to give up everything just for a few $billion is, of course, open to question.
So what do you reckon the next steps will be? I mean, you mentioned Donald Trump's deadline. Will we know only after Russia has received and assessed the latest draft agreement from the US?
I suspect that there will be a leak just to see what check out, if you like, what the water is internationally. I think the plan will be given privately to Russia and simultaneously leaked, and we'll see what happens then. That is what I expect, simply on the basis that it will be good to see what the rest of the world thinks. It won't influence Russia much, but it will mean that we'll have a chance to see it before it goes much further. As for the Thursday deadline, this is concentrated thoughts. I expect Donald Trump to shift this deadline by at least a week soon, probably come Tuesday, Wednesday, because on the basis that progress is being made.
Dr. Laskiewicz, we are always the wiser for your analysis. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the author and international affairs analyst, and he was talking to me on the line there from London.